Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 31st Annual PPMD Conference. Yeah, just so you know, we started when I was 20, so that works out pretty well for me. So I'm Pat Furlong. I am honored to serve on the staff of PPMD. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about us, so that those of you who aren't familiar with PPMD get to know what we do and why we do it. And what we do and why we do it is about community and about the people that have a diagnosis of Duchenne, the diagnosis of Becker, or the women who carry this gene. So the PPMD way is all of us together, all of our strength together, all of our hope together, and all of our work that continues to go on. So this is our mission. We accelerate research. We raise our voices to impact policy. We demand optimal care. We demand that every person receives optimal care for every single family, and we connect this community together because I think it's about our connections that matter. The people we need to speak with, the people that we need to see in clinic, the people that we need to see in industry, the people that we need to see in policy, and our friends, this family that we gathered based on a diagnosis. We have been funding research for the last 31 years. When we started, we knew we had to characterize the disease because very much was unknown then. 31 years ago, we had a gene and we had a protein. And that's about as far as we knew about this disease and its diagnosis and its implications. So we fund research what we call a cross-translation, and that means we look at characterizing the disease. What is the pathology? What's the biology? What's happening? And where are the targets? How can you intervene? And so a translation is looking at that target, testing it in every single animal model. I think we've all seen enough MDX mice to serve us forever, and the D2s and the this and the that. So it goes into the animal studies. It's often in cells, sometimes in primates, depending on what the technology is. And finally, we see clinical trials. And those are our hope for a future. So just to look at what we've done, when we think about characterizing a disease, we also have to know who the people are who are diagnosed with this disease. So way back 16 years ago, with the Center for Disease Control, we established our registry. So the registry it's the largest registry in the world. 5,500 people are in that registry. And why would you want to do that? Because you want to understand that person, their genetics, how they're doing over time, what interventions they use, and what those interventions do to improve the quality of life and the lifespan of those individuals. We've funded 275 grants and more on the way over those years. We are now working with more than 20 companies that are really investing in us to deliver the therapies that we so need. We have, in this country of the United States, 8 US approvals and potentially another one coming up before the end of the year. We've spent, thanks to all of you, $55 million. We've invested that and leveraged from a community in terms of policy, NIH money, and other foundations. In care, I think when you sit in that small office and you receive a diagnosis, it feels pretty lonely. You just don't know where to turn. The first step is, where do you go? So we wanted to work with all of our experts and all of our healthcare professionals and make sure that every family has access to the best care possible. And so that when they enter one of those clinics, they sort of know what they're getting, interdisciplinary care, and also this year we added a research designation, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So we have now 39 certified Duchenne care centers. We just were able to certify the CHOP, or Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, in the past few weeks. These are interdisciplinary centers that deliver optimal care. And it's an amazing network. In that network are 900 healthcare professionals. This includes all of the people you think about, the neurology, cardiology, pulmonology, all of those ologies, right? And all of the nurses and the research coordinators and all of the people that support that infrastructure and make it go forward. So we've been working really hard to make sure that you have access to the best care possible. Community, that's us. That's all of us together. That's every individual in this room and every individual around the world. All of our international partners, we're a community. A family you might not have wanted to join. Maybe we brought you kicking and screaming. That's exactly how I got here. But we're here together with this family, and we can do our work together. So this is our community. This is a photograph on the bottom from last year's conference that was an amazing sense of community. And I think the best thing about community is when you talk to each other, there's that knowledge of where you are, what's happening, and how can I be helpful. So the community is the heart of what we do. It means everything to us. And I think this is the work we've done together to bring us here to this day, where in the United States, 8 approvals, 1 pending, and certainly more on the way. We have 31 Connect groups. These are led by parents, and they are designed in the Connect they call them the Connect coordinators, and these coordinators just network with the families that live in the same area so that they can help each other, support each other, give advice to each other, hold each other's hands when that's needed as well. We have an adult advisory committee. This is led by Pat Motion. Pat Motion has these adults 18 years and over. I'm guessing some of them are downstairs or at the Bellagio, and any proceeds come back to us. So I'm really glad to be here in Las Vegas and happy for the PAC committee. We have local fundraising events, as you might imagine, and through those events have made $45 million, which has been invested in research. And we have touched 15,000 families. In the United States, by the CDC surveillance, there are 18,000, plus or minus a few, individuals with Duchenne or Becker or females who carry this gene in the United States. So I'm very hopeful we can say we're reaching most of the people, and soon, hopefully, all of the people in the United States and abroad. And just for all of you runners, I'm not one of them. We are going to celebrate our 20th anniversary in Disney this year, in January. This will be 20 years of our race project. In Disney, you can run a 5K, a 10K, half marathon, full marathon, or if you're gutsy enough, you can run all of those. And that is called the Goofy. And I will say to you, it's pretty goofy. But people do it, and it's an incredible community effort to see those runners. And I will say, even though I'm not a runner, I think you can look at me and tell that, I've run is a loose term, the 5 and the 10 at Disney and other races. And what's amazing to me is the 70,000 or so runners are all running for something they care about. And just sharing the stories of why you're running is really important. And it's an important program. So if you're interested, I don't recommend you run out in 107-degree weather and test it. But I think if you can run around the block, you might be able to run a race. So think about that. Advocacy. When my boys were diagnosed with Duchenne, one of my questions was, what is the federal investment in Duchenne muscular dystrophy? So that means National Institutes of Health, the Department of Defense, the Center for Disease Control. What's that investment? It was less than $2 million a year. I think from our industry partners, if we'd ask them, what does it take to drive drug development and get a drug to market, they'd say $1 billion. So at $2 million a year, billion, you're going to take some time. So we knew that we had to leverage money from the federal institutions, and our advocacy efforts have done just that. So we want to talk about policy, because it's not just about money from the National Institutes of Health or the Department of Defense, or for that matter, the Center for Disease Control. It's also about regulatory policy. How does the FDA think about this? What is the unmet need here? How can we impress the FDA about what it is to live with Duchenne or Becker or be a woman who carries this gene? What are the health needs here? What are the therapy needs? What's the medicines development we need? And so explaining that to them so as they consider whether or if to approve a product, they understand this unmet need and the urgency of getting therapies to the people who need them. So this is our advocacy conference. It happens each year in Washington, D.C. In Washington, people come to the conference We usually spend the first day training you about going to see your representatives on the Hill. We then spend the next day, which is a Monday morning, talking about the landscape of policy. And as you know, if you hadn't heard, we have a new president. That's all I'm allowed to say. We have a new president, and he has appointed any number of people to the federal institutions that we care about. Dr. Makari is running the FDA at this moment. RFK is in charge of Health and Human Services. Dr. Prasad is still leading the Center for Biologics, and Teresa Brancaccio still leads the Center for Drugs. So we need new relationships, because whenever we get a new administration, we want to go out up to that new administration, create some friendships, get some deep friendships, understanding of need, and have a dialogue about what they would like to know and do in order to accelerate the development of medicines for Duchenne. So that's exactly what we do. In addition to that is policy. Medicare, Medicaid, the people or the insurance policies or the insurance agencies that provide services and insurance coverage for the very drugs that we're going to need, we need to talk to those folks too. Again, I've learned in Washington, it's all about relationships. And the more and the deeper those relationships are, the more helpful they can be in the end of the day. So going to Washington, D.C. and visiting with the people who represent your state, your Hill members in terms of the House of Representatives or the Senate, where you have 2 representatives, get to know them. And I think relationships are so important. And it's not just, hello, I'm really interested in Duchenne or Becker muscular dystrophy. It is about creating a relationship. And I think we have Brian Denger here has had a relationship with Senator Susan Collins for many, many years, I think in excess of 10 or 15 years. So it is about establishing those relationships. So when members change, we go back in and start making new relationships so that we can be able to leverage their interest against some of our policies and our needs so that they understand we need medicines development, we also need insurance coverage of those medicines, and we need the policies that are going to support that. So here's what we've done over the years. With our advocacy efforts, we've leveraged $850 million out of the National Institutes of Health, the Center for Disease Control, and the Department of Defense. I will say to you that we have a congressionally directed medical research program, or because everything in Washington, D.C. is an acronym, it's called CDMRP. The CDMRP program has grown from its early years of $3.2 million earmark per year to this year. Even in the current administration, we were able to get that in place and save it, and it's $12.5 million. So that is specific to Duchenne. People come into that with a letter of intent and then a full proposal, and the committee reviews it, and we award those that survive in terms of are funded or received well and scientifically sound. We are able as a committee to sit on that committee and get that money back to the people who need them to develop the medicines that we need. So the CDMRP is, again, this is advocacy. This is certain people sit on a committee in the House, in the Senate, and we go meet those people and talk about the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, because that money is critically important to us. Again, it's about relationships. We have people send letters to Congress. 13,000 letters have gone to Congress. Again, relationships, sending a letter, and we generate the letter. One of the things that I've learned in Washington, D.C. is we have to be very consistent in what we're asking for. Because if 10 of us ask for something different, Congress doesn't know how to interpret it, and you're not going to get it through. As a result of that, we've had 4 bills signed into law. We're very anxious to be involved in the next PDUFA legislation. This is Prescription Drug User Fee Act. It's going to come up in 2026, and this is what governs the FDA. These are the laws about the FDA. So we get into those discussions. We're certainly not the only one, as you might imagine, but having our voice heard in PDUFA legislation that talks to FDA is going to be very important and something we want to get very involved in. We've had 2,500 Hill meetings. That's a lot of meetings. They call it in Washington, you're pounding the pavement. We've had advocates go door to door to door. We also know Senator Roger Wicker, a long time ago when he was working on legislation, he went door to door in the House and Senate to get some of the legislation we cared about passed and signed into law. So those are the kind of people we like to make relationships in the House and Senate, because knowing that they will go to their colleagues and help us and support us as we want legislation passed, Those are the relationships we need. And we have done a pilot on newborn screening. There was a pilot in Ohio, followed by a pilot that was well supported by our industry partners and our collaborators. So we were before the RUSP, which is the Registered Uniform Screening Panel of the United States. The RUSP committee has now been dismantled, but we are happy to say that it is still being considered as part of the RUSP panel. But 5 states have already adopted the use of newborn screening. I think I could name them, but I'll just say I'm from Ohio, and Ohio is one of them, so that's a good thing about Ohio. All right, we are immersed in this research. We are immersed and deeply steadfast in what we want to do and why. And I think it's important for us, as we know, clinical trials are going on, and these are really difficult. They're disruptive to our families, but important in medicine's development that we as a community continue to participate in clinical trials. I think we've heard a lot of news in the past week, and we kind of think about how difficult are these decisions? How difficult is it for a family to sit in front of a physician and hear this diagnosis, and then say what's next? And that is a very thoughtful, hard discussion. It comes with sleepless nights, it comes with anxiety, it comes with talks with your family members, your partner, your extended family members, and finally the person who's going to participate in this clinical trial. All of those people have to say yes. And never mind when we go to the clinicians and say, what would you do if this was your son? And they can't answer that because it's not their son. But they can guide us and answer our questions. So our job here as PPMD is to connect you with the people that can answer your questions, connect you with the clinicians that can talk about your care, connect you with our industry partners in whose therapy development you're interested in understanding. We're conveners. We want you to have access to the people, the places, the opportunities, and all of that is combined with an access to hope. Because given the prognosis and the natural history that we know, we as a community want that changed. And we're going to change it by participating in trials, access to treatment, and that discussion that is free access and available access to the people that can help you. So as a PPMD team, and most of my team members are in this audience, we are the people that can certainly give you the opportunity, open the door that you'd like to talk to whoever, open the door that you'd like to see clinical care by a certain group, open the doors so that you can talk to the people, even in policy, that are going to help you make decisions for yourself and your family members so that hope is always bright and you are on the horizon of change with all of us. I can't thank you enough for coming here today. I can imagine that it's a little disruptive, although Las Vegas is disruptive in and of itself. But I think when the community gathers, we feel the energy and the power of our hope for each other. And I hope that we are thoughtful as a community to think about the difficulty of the decisions that are faced with all of us. And I hope you'll continue to participate and understand that we are in this together, and together we will end Duchenne.